I had just finished a long day at work in a city a few hours away from my home. It was already getting late, and I was anxious to get back. I hopped in my car and began the drive home. The highway was deserted, and I was driving alone through the dark, isolated roads. After a while, I came upon a sign that said the highway ahead was closed off due to an accident. Oh great, just what I wanted right now. I had to take a detour and enter into a countryside road to get home. I had never been on this road before, so I took out my phone and GPS my way home. Not bad, it was only like 20 minutes extra. A few miles in, I suddenly saw a deer jumped out onto the road and just stopped and looked at my car. I had to brake hard to come to a full stop. I was just like 10 feet away from the deer. For a while, we were just staring at each other. I thought it was odd that the deer wasn't running away like they usually do. It was just standing there, staring at me with those big, brown eyes. Suddenly, I heard a rustling sound from the nearby bushes. I turned my head and saw nothing, but the rustling continued. It was a creepy feeling, so I honked my horn at the deer. When the horn did nothing, I just decided to go around it and sped away. What a weird situation that was. I did not know what to think of it, but when all of a sudden, my phone started ringing. It was an unknown phone number. I answered it, but all I heard was the sound of a car speeding by. It was like the person on the other side was on the side of the road. Then, I heard a honk inside the phone, and then a car speeding away. The phone went dead after that. My heart was pounding as I tried to make sense of what just happened. Was it a prank call? Or was it someone watching me? I shook off the feeling of unease and continued driving. After a while, I came upon a tree in the middle of the road blocking my way. I let out a curse, looked both ways, and saw that the side of the road is wide enough for me to just squeeze by. When I went on the side of the road, I heard movements again, this time like someone dragging something. I didn't want to pull down my windows in case it was not safe, so I just drove slowly while listening with all my might. Then I heard what sounded like someone's coughing. It was so unnerving, so I did not stop and just drove away. A few miles in, I suddenly heard my phone ringing again. I picked up my phone again, and this time I heard someone coughing in the phone. Then I heard a car coming up and stopped on the road. After a few minutes, it looked like the car was going to the side of the road. I heard the car coming closer and closer to the phone, and then all of a sudden, the person in the phone just moved. It sounded like this person was dragging something. The phone suddenly stopped when the car drove away. Now this time I knew that there was nothing normal about the phone call. It seemed to be about me. I was so shook up and confused. I did not know what to think at all. Then up ahead I saw a car's headlight coming towards me. I was relieved to see that, because it meant that I was not alone on this road. When the car was right beside me, I took a quick glimpse at it, and my heart almost stopped. The person driving in the car looked like me. I was on the phone, and then in the back seat, there was a woman just sitting there, leaning close to my ears as if listening intently to the phone. When the car sped by me, I was so shook. I looked at my GPS again, and this time I was only a minute or so away from merging onto a highway again. The moment I saw the highway and merged onto it, I suddenly saw cars on the highway going about their business. It was such a good feeling seeing that, because I knew I was safe. I still don't know what I saw back there, but to this day I haven't gone on that road again. One weekend I decided to go fishing. All of my friends were busy that day, so I went alone. It was the first time I went to that fishing spot alone, but I did not think much of it. While there, I was having so much fun that I did not see the time passing by until the sun was already setting. I decided to pack up my things before it gets any darker. When I pulled out of the lake and went onto the highway, it was already dark. I still had about an hour to go before reaching home. I turned up my music on the phone so I could be in the mood to drive. It was also the first time I was on this highway alone, but I didn't think there was nothing to be worried about. About a few more miles in, I suddenly heard a splash inside the trunk of my car. I thought it was just one of the big carp I caught making the sound, so I did not think much of it too. But then after a while, I heard the splashing sound coming from the back trunk again. I then suddenly remembered that I did not have any water at all inside the trunk. I started to have goosebumps at this point. The splashing stopped and there was no more noise, so I decided to just keep on driving. This time I went a little faster so that I would reach home sooner. Nothing else happened, so I just thought maybe I did have water in the back trunk. I decided to think nothing else of it and continued driving. Then all of a sudden, I heard a loud bang in the back trunk, like someone was banging on the roof of the trunk trying to get out. My heart almost stopped at this point. I knew that I did not put a person in there, so if it was not me, someone or something must have slipped in there at some point. I did not stop at all, I just kept on driving, this time going 30 above the speed limit. While in the car, the banging kept starting and stopping frequently. When I was about 10 minutes off the highway, the banging did not start again. I was hoping it would stay like this, but then when I looked at my rear mirror to the back seat, I saw something. I had to rub my eyes again to make sure I was not hallucinating. I looked again, and there it was. It was a head sticking out of the back seat looking at me. The face was all blue, like the person had been drowned for quite a while. I was so scared that I suddenly started screaming with all my might. I grabbed my steering wheel lock and gave it a shove towards the back seat. I then looked again and the face was gone. I looked everywhere but I still couldn't see it. When I got home, I asked my brothers to come out and told them everything. We opened the back trunk and then a rotten odor just blasted right in our face. The fish were all rotten, like they had died for a long time. We quickly took out the fish and threw them away. We looked everywhere in the car, but there was nothing else. We didn't have any explanation for it, so we all went inside and stayed up just talking about it. I learned my lesson about going fishing alone. I had just left my girlfriend's house in the neighboring city and was heading back home. It was already late at night, but I didn't mind as I was looking forward to getting back to my own bed. It was a tiring day for me. I drove for a while on the highway, the road ahead of me illuminated by my car's headlights. I've been through this road for so many times, so I know my way home very well. I thought it was going to be the same that night. But while I was driving, all of a sudden, I just forgot where I was. I knew I was going home and that I haven't deviated from the road I always took, but somehow, this road just seemed different. I forgot how to get home from here. For a second, I thought I was beginning to show signs of amnesia. I kept darting my eyes here and there to hopefully jot down a memory so I can remember where I was. I was starting to get nervous when I looked to the side and thought I saw someone sleeping there. I was going so fast that it was just a blur, but the shape seemed to be human-like. After a while, I saw it again, a human-like shape sleeping on the ground on the side of the road. I slowed my speed down enough so that I could get a clear view of it. As I got closer, I could see that it was indeed a person lying on the ground. But something was off. Their clothes were torn, and they had cuts and bruises all over their body. It was like they had been in a terrible accident, but there was no sign of a car or any other vehicle around. My first instinct was it was someone who needed help, so when I passed the person, I came to a full stop and reversed back. When my car was beside the person, I stopped and then unbuckled my seatbelt and was about to open the door when I thought I heard a creaking sound, like bones moving. I quickly looked out, but to my shock, the person disappeared. I rubbed my eyes and shook my head, thinking that maybe I was just seeing things. But as I looked around, I realized that I was completely alone on the road. The person I had seen just seconds ago was nowhere to be found. I felt a chill run down my spine and my heart started racing. What had just happened? Was it all in my head? Or was something truly terrifying going on? Was it related to how I couldn't remember where I was? I had so many questions in my head but no answers. The only thing I knew was that I shouldn't get out. I was safer in the car. I buckled my seatbelt again and looked out one more times. I drove my car and do a full circle so I could see everywhere clearly. When I still couldn't see the person, I then just drove away. When I was a bit further away, I let out a sigh and continued driving. After a while, I suddenly saw someone standing on the side of the road, waving at me. This time, I didn't need to slow down to see the person. It was the same one I saw lying down a while ago, but this time he was standing. I thought it was weird and off about how he was standing, but when my car was right beside him, I suddenly realized why. His body was facing away from me. It was just that his head was twisted 180 degrees to look at me, while a huge grin on his face. My body just shook when I realized that, and I just stepped on the gas and sped out of there. I was so scared that he might follow me again, but when I kept driving and driving, I suddenly saw an ambulance ahead of me speeding towards me and past me. After the ambulance passed me, it was like a light bulb inside me just lit up. I suddenly remember where I was. The feeling was so strange, but I was so relieved to feel it. I just went home, and the next day I told my girlfriend about what had happened. We agreed for me to take a small break before visiting her again.